The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal floor. Light from a dozen artificial suns poured through the transparent dome above, casting rainbow shadows across the assembled delegates. Representatives from 47 spacefaring civilizations had gathered on Varith Prime for the annual summit, just as they had done for thousands of years before humanity ever looked up at the stars. High Chancellor Zorath of the Velkan Dominion stood at the central podium, his forearms raised in the traditional greeting of peace. His scaled skin shimmered blue and gold under the lights as he surveyed the chamber. The Cathari delegation occupied the eastern section, their insectoid bodies clicking and buzzing in their private language. The Morven floated in their containment spheres, their gelatinous forms pulsing with bioluminescent thoughts. The Surathi collective had sent their finest diplomats, their tentacles wrapped around data tablets as they prepared for the day's negotiations. Everything was as it should be. Everything except for one glaring absence. Zoroth's yellow eyes, fixed on a section of empty seats near the center of the amphitheater. 12 chairs designed specifically for human comfort sat unoccupied. The small table before them held water and snacks that no one had touched. The human delegation had never arrived. Perhaps they are simply late, suggested Delegate, then from her position among the Proxima representatives. The small, fur-covered being scratched behind her ear with obvious nervousness. Human ships are known for their technical difficulties. A harsh laugh came from the Cathari section. Human ships are primitive garbage held together by hope and welding, clicked General Krethver. But even garbage usually floats to its destination eventually. The chamber filled with murmurs of agreement. Humanity had always been the youngest species in the Council. Having achieved faster-than-light travel only 300 years ago, they were tolerated rather than respected. Useful for certain tasks but never considered equals, Zorath raised one hand for silence. We will attempt to contact their embassy. The communication went out to the human diplomatic compound on Varith Prime, just 40 kilometers from the Council chamber. The signal bounced back unanswered. A second attempt produced the same result. Then a third. Send a patrol to their embassy, Zoroth ordered, a cold feeling beginning to form in his stomach. The patrol returned within the hour. Their report sent a chill through the entire assembly. The embassy is empty, High Chancellor, reported the Velcon captain. The lights are on. The environmental systems are running. Food sits half-eaten on plates. But there is no one there. No humans. No bodies. Nothing. Ambassador Krethanol of the Sirathi Collective rose from her position, her tentacles writhing with agitation. This must be some human joke. They have a strange sense of humor. Try their homeworld, someone called from the back of the chamber. The Council's communication array was the most powerful in the known galaxy. It could reach across 200 light-years in moments. Within minutes, signals had been sent to Earth, to the human colonies on Mars and Europa, to the mining operations in the Tau Ceti system, to the research stations scattered across a dozen star systems. Every signal returned empty. Every frequency remained dead. Counselor Thrinchia of the Yolkathi slowly stood. She was ancient by her species standards, having lived through 4 galactic wars and the rise and fall of 3 empires. Her voice, when she spoke, carried the weight of centuries. They are gone, she said simply. All of them. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted over each other in 100 different languages. The translation system struggled to keep up. Some demanded immediate investigation. Others suggested this was an elaborate human trick. A few quietly celebrated. Believing the galaxy was better off without the primitive newcomers, Zorath slammed all 4 fists against the podium, the sound echoing through the hall like thunder. Silence. The noise died slowly, replaced by a tense, frightened quiet. We will organize an investigation fleet, Zorath announced. Ships from every willing civilization will converge on the Sol system. We will determine what has happened to humanity. The fleet assembled faster than any military operation in galactic history. Within 3 standard days, vessels from 12 civilizations had gathered at the edge of human space. Cathari warships flew alongside Morven research vessels. Sarathi explorers shared coordinates with Therakan cruisers. Species that had not cooperated in centuries now worked together. United by a mystery none of them understood, they found Earth exactly where it had always been. A blue and green jewel hanging in the darkness of space. The planet looked peaceful from orbit. City lights sparkled on the night side. Clouds drifted lazily over the continents. Satellites continued their endless orbits, maintaining communication networks that no one was using, Commander. The Vexthal of the Cathari led the first landing party. His team set down in what human records identified as New York City, one of the largest population centers on Earth. The streets should have been crowded with millions of humans, going about their daily lives instead. Vexthal found silence. Cars sat abandoned in the middle of roads, their doors hanging open. A food cart stood on a corner, its products rotting in the sun. A child's toy lay in the middle of a sidewalk next to a communication device still displaying a half-written message. The message read, "I love you. I will see you when I get it," ended there. The human who had been writing it had simply ceased to exist before finishing the sentence. "There are no bodies," Vexthal reported to the fleet. "No signs of violence. No evidence of evacuation. 8 billion humans lived on this planet. They are all gone." The investigation spread across the planet. Teams landed in Beijing and London, in Sydney and Cairo, in Sao Paulo and Mumbai. Every city told the same story. Every town, every village, every isolated farmhouse. Humanity had vanished in what appeared to be a single instant. The same was true on Mars, where the domed colonies sat empty and silent. On Europa, where underwater research stations drifted without crews. On Titan, where mining operations continued on autopilot, machines digging materials that no one would ever use. 11 billion. Humans had disappeared without a trace. Back on Varith Prime, the Galactic Council reconvened in a state of shock. The great hall that had once buzzed with political maneuvering and diplomatic games now felt like a funeral chamber. Even species that had openly despised humanity seemed shaken by the scale of the disappearance. Could it be a weapon? Asked General Krethfer, his usual aggression replaced by genuine fear. Something that could eliminate an entire species. "If such a weapon exists," replied Thrensha grimly, "then we are all in danger." But it was the Morven science team that changed everything. Deep in the archives of humanity's central database on Luna, they found a file that had been created exactly 1 day before the disappearance. The file was small, containing only a single sentence. But that sentence would haunt the galaxy for generations to come. "We have decided to leave. Please take care of what we've built." A file was signed by Samuel Gray, chair of the United Earth Council. Chancellor Zorith read the message aloud to the assembled delegates. When he finished, the silence was absolute. This was not an attack. This was not a disaster. This was not an accident. Humanity had chosen to leave, and they had not thought the galaxy worthy of an explanation. The message from Samuel Gray spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within days, every civilization knew that humanity had not been destroyed or abducted. They had simply decided to leave. The question that consumed every thinking being in known space was painfully simple. Why? Chancellor Zoroth ordered a complete examination of all human records, databases, and archives. Thousands of researchers from dozens of species descended on human space, picking through the remains of a civilization like archaeologists studying ancient ruins. But unlike ancient ruins, everything here was fresh. The coffee in abandoned cups was still warm on some worlds. The flowers in window boxes had not yet begun to wilt. The Sarathi researcher named Nathriel led a team to the Human Capitol building in a city called Washington. The structure was impressive by human standards, though laughably small compared to the government centers of older civilizations. Inside, they found offices filled with paperwork, meeting rooms with agendas still displayed on screens, and a central chamber where the United Earth Council had held its final session. The recording of that session had been deliberately preserved. Nathriel activated the playback system and watched as 23 humans took their seats. Around a circular table, they ranged in age from young adults to elderly, representing every region of Earth and every major human colony. At the head of the table sat Samuel Gray, a man with gray hair and tired eyes who looked far older than his 60 years. "The vote is complete," Samuel said in the recording. His voice was calm but heavy with emotion. "The decision is unanimous. After 300 years, we will depart." A woman across the table spoke. Her name tag identified her as Lucy Palmer, representative for Extrasolar Affairs. "Are we certain this is the right choice?" "Perhaps if we waited longer, we have waited 3 centuries. Lucy interrupted a younger man named Daniel Torres. 300 years of being dismissed. 300 years of being called primitive. 300, yay. Ours of saving their lives, solving their problems, and receiving nothing but contempt in return. How much longer should we wait?" "They are not all bad," Lucy replied softly. "Some of them have shown kindness." "Some," agreed Samuel, "but not enough. The Council still refuses to grant us full voting rights. The Cathari still call us insects. The Velcons still believe we are incapable of true intelligence because our lifespans are too short. We have tried everything, Lucy. We have been patient. We have been helpful. We have been peaceful. And still they look at us and see only primitives." The recording continued for another hour. The council members discussed logistics, timing, and the message they would leave behind. They debated whether to explain their reasons in detail or keep the farewell brief. In the end, they chose brevity. "Let them figure it out themselves," Daniel suggested. "Perhaps the lesson will mean more if they have to work for it." The final moments of the recording showed Samuel Gray typing the message that would be found in the lunar archives. His face was a mixture of sadness and determination. When he finished, he looked directly at the camera, as if he knew that someday aliens would be watching. "We did not want it to end this way," he said. "We came to the stars hoping to find friends. We found neighbors instead. Cold, suspicious, arrogant neighbors who tolerated us only because we were useful. We stayed because we hoped you would change. We stayed because we loved the universe too much to give up on it. But love cannot survive on hope alone. Perhaps our absence will teach you what our presence could not." He reached for the recording controls. "Goodbye. We will be watching. We will be hoping. Try to be better than you have been." The screen went dark. Nathriel sat in silence for a long time after the recording ended. Around her, her team members exchanged uncertain glances. None of them knew what to say. The discovery of the council recording prompted deeper investigation into humanity's relationship with the galactic community. What the researchers found painted a disturbing picture. Humanity had volunteered for the most dangerous missions in galactic history. When the unstable wormhole in the Carina sector threatened to destroy 3 inhabited systems, it was human engineers who developed a solution. 47 of them died implementing it. The Galactic Council had not even sent a thank you message when the plague of 2847 swept through the Morven homeworld, threatening to wipe out their entire species. Human doctors worked around the clock for 2 years to develop a cure. The Morven government had responded by demanding that the humans leave immediately after delivering the treatment, complaining that their presence was offensive to Morven sensibilities when the Cathari and Hurricane empires had been on the brink of war. A war that would have killed trillions. It was a human diplomat named Catherine Brooks who negotiated the peace. She spent 3 years living among species that openly despised her, earning their trust through patience and kindness. When the peace treaty was signed, she was not invited to the celebration. The records went on and on. Humanity had given everything to the galactic community. They had asked for nothing in return except acceptance. That acceptance had never come. Commander Vextel found himself reading through personnel files of humans who had served in joint military operations. He had always considered humans to be adequate soldiers at best, lacking the natural weapons and armor of more advanced species. Now he saw the truth hidden in casualty, reports and mission summaries. Humans had volunteered for suicide missions so that other species would not have to. They had thrown themselves in front of weapons fire to protect aliens who considered them inferior. They had stayed behind on doomed ships to ensure others could escape, never asking for glory or recognition. "They died for us," Vextel said to no one in particular. Again and again, They died for us, and we never noticed. Perhaps the most heartbreaking discovery came from the personal journals and diaries recovered from human homes. Millions of individual humans had recorded their thoughts and feelings about life among the stars. Their words revealed a species that had never stopped hoping, never stopped believing that the other civilizations would eventually see them as equals. A young woman named Maria Santos had written in her diary, "Today a Kethari called me a pest and told me I smelled bad. But I smiled and helped him anyway. Maybe tomorrow he will see that we are not so different." An elderly man named George Kim had recorded, 50 years I have worked with the Sirathi. 50 years of being treated like a servant. But I do not regret it. Every time I help them, I plant a seed. Someday those seeds will grow into understanding." A child named Tommy Wright had asked in a school essay, "Why do the aliens hate us?" "We just want to be their friends. Maybe if we keep trying, they will like us someday." The researchers compiled thousands of such entries. Each one told the same story. Humanity had never given up on the dream of acceptance. They had endured centuries of rejection with patience and grace, always believing that tomorrow would be better, and then one day. They had finally accepted that tomorrow would never come. The Galactic Council convened to receive the final investigation report. The Great Hall was silent as the evidence was presented. No one interrupted. No one argued. When the presentation ended, Chancellor Zoroth looked out at the assembled delegates with something none of them had ever seen in his eyes before: shame.
Ow.
"We did this," he said quietly. "We drove them away. Not through war or violence, but through something far worse. Indifference, contempt. We had the most remarkable species in the galaxy living among us, and we treated them like dirt beneath our feet." He paused, struggling to maintain his composure. "They are gone, and we will never have the chance to tell them how wrong we were." 6 months after humanity vanished, the galaxy began to fall apart. The first crisis erupted in the Outer Reach, a lawless region of space where 3 powerful civilizations had competed for resources for over 10,000 years. The Kethari hive clusters claimed the mineral-rich asteroid belts. The Theracon Empire insisted those same asteroids fell within their ancestral territory. The Morvan Collective needed the rare elements found there to sustain their biological processes. For the past century, human peacekeepers had maintained a buffer zone between these hostile powers. They had no weapons capable of threatening any of the 3 civilizations. They had no military strength worth mentioning. What they had was something far more valuable: the ability to talk. Human mediators had spent decades learning the languages, customs, and histories of each species. They understood the ancient grudges and the modern grievances. When tensions arose, they knew exactly what to say to calm things down. When negotiations stalled, they found creative solutions that allowed all parties to save face. Now, the human mediators were gone, and there was no one left who knew how to keep the peace. The fighting began over a single asteroid. A Kethari mining vessel accused a Therakan patrol of threatening their operations. The Therakans claimed that Kethari had entered their territory illegally. Within hours, shots were fired. Within days, fleets were mobilizing. Within weeks, the entire Outer Reach was engulfed in the largest war the region had seen in 3,000 years. Chancellor Zoroth dispatched diplomatic teams to negotiate a ceasefire. They failed spectacularly. The Velkon diplomats did not understand the subtle body language of the Kethari. The Sarathi negotiators accidentally insulted the Therakan emperor by using the wrong form of address. Every attempt to bring the warring parties together only made things worse. The humans made it look so easy, admitted Ambassador Krethanal as another peace conference collapsed into shouting and threats. "I never realized how much skill it required." General Krethver of the Kethari found himself remembering all the times he had mocked human diplomats. He had called them soft, weak, and naive. He had laughed at their attempts to find common ground between species that had hated each other for millennia. Now, as his soldiers died by the thousands in a war that nobody wanted, he understood what the humans had actually been doing. They had been holding the galaxy together with nothing but words and patience. The second crisis was economic. Human trade networks had quietly become the foundation of galactic commerce. Human merchants were considered unremarkable. their ships outdated, their technology primitive. But those unremarkable merchants had established trade routes between civilizations that refused to deal with each other directly. The Cathari would not buy from the Therakan. The Therakan would not sell to the Morvan. The Morvan would not negotiate with the Cathari. These species had nursed their hatreds for so long that direct commerce was unthinkable, but they would all trade with humans. Human cargo ships had served as neutral intermediaries, buying goods from one species and selling them to another. Human merchants had built relationships based on trust and fairness, never favoring one customer over another. They had created a web of economic connections that spanned the entire galaxy, with humanity at the center. When humanity vanished, that web collapsed. Within 6 months, 17 regional economies had failed. Worlds that depended on imported food faced starvation. Civilizations that relied on traded technology found themselves unable to maintain basic inf. RAS structure. The Galactic Council scrambled to establish alternative trade networks, but no other species was trusted enough to fill the gap humanity had left. "We never sold anything important," said a Surthi economist in a council briefing. "We never manufactured anything essential." But somehow, the removal of human commerce has caused more damage than any war in living memory. The answer was obvious to anyone willing to see it. Humans had not been important because of what they made or sold. They had been important because they were trusted. In a galaxy full of ancient hatreds and bitter rivalries, humanity had been the only neutral party everyone could rely on. The third crisis was slower to develop, but ultimately the most devastating. Species across the galaxy began to examine their own histories, looking for answers to how things had gone so wrong. What they found was a pattern of human contribution that had been systematically overlooked and forgotten. The standard navigation charts used by every spacefaring civilization had been developed by human explorers. Those explorers had volunteered for the most dangerous mapping expeditions, traveling into uncharted space where older, wiser species refused to go. Hundreds of human ships had been lost. Thousands of human lives had been sacrificed. The result was a comprehensive map of safe travel routes that the galaxy now took for granted. Medical advances that had saved billions of lives across dozens of species could be traced back to human research. Human scientists had studied diseases that did not affect their own kind, purely to help others. Human doctors had volunteered in hospitals on worlds where they were treated as inferior beings, working long hours for no recognition or reward. The great engineering projects of the past. 3 centuries had human fingerprints all over them. The stabilization of the Carina wormhole, the construction of the Varath prime energy grid, the development of more efficient, faster-than-light drives. Humans had contributed to all of these achievements, yet their names appeared nowhere in the official records. "We wrote them out of history," realized the Yolkathi philosopher Thrensia. "We were so convinced of our own superiority that we could not accept the possibility that these primitive creatures might have taught us anything. So we took credit for their work and pretended they had contributed nothing." The shame spread slowly through galactic civilization. Species that had mocked humanity began to wonder what else they had missed. Leaders who had dismissed human concerns started reading through old proposals and suggestions that had been ignored. What they found often left them speechless. Humans had proposed solutions to problems that still plagued the galaxy. They had offered warnings about dangers that had since come to pass. They had suggested improvements that could have saved millions of lives if anyone had listened. But no one had listened, because the ideas came from humans. Humans were primitive. A memorial service was held on Varoth Prime, organized by species that had once refused to share a room with human delegates. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was filled for the first time since humanity's disappearance. But now it was filled with mourners instead of politicians. Chancellor Zorath gave the opening address. His voice cracked several times as he spoke. "We stand here today to honor a species we never honored when they lived among us. We gather to mourn friends we never acknowledged as friends. We come to apologize to those who can no longer hear our apologies." He paused, looking out at the thousands of beings who had come to pay their respects. The humans asked nothing from us, except acceptance. They gave everything and expected nothing in return. They saved our lives, solved our problems, and maintained our peace. And we repaid them with contempt and condescension. Zeroth's 4 hands clenched at his sides. We cannot bring them back. We cannot undo the centuries of cruelty and neglect. But we can learn from our failure. We can become the civilization they believed we could be. We can prove that their hope in us was not misplaced. He raised his eyes to the ceiling, to the stars beyond. Wherever you are, humanity, know that we finally understand. Know that we are sorry. Know that we will try to be worthy of the faith you placed in us. In the silence that followed, many of the assembled beings found themselves crying for the first time in their lives. They wept for the friends they had lost. They wept for the chances they had wasted. They wept for a galaxy that suddenly felt very empty and very cold. Humanity had been the heart of galactic civilization, and no one had noticed until that heart stopped beating. The memorial service had been a moment of grief, but grief eventually gives way to determination. A faction emerged within the Galactic Council. They refused to accept humanity's departure as the final chapter of the story. By the Ravenau, I didn't Jedi, I'll render I granite on red, I am the red, I'm refracted around, right, of the Sirathi collective stood before the assembly, her tentacles writhing with passionate energy. She had spent months studying human records and had become something rare among her people. A true believer in humanity's worth. They left us a message, she argued. They asked us to take care of what they built. Those are not the words of a species that has abandoned us forever. They are the words of a parent leaving instructions for a child. They expect to return someday. They expect to see what we have done with their legacy. Her words sparked fierce debate. Some delegates insisted that humanity was gone forever, that searching for them was a waste of resources. Others argued that finding humanity had become necessary for practical reasons. The galaxy needed them back, but Nathriel spoke of something deeper. This is not about what we need, she said. This is about what we owe. We owe humanity an apology. We owe them recognition. We owe them the chance to hear us say that we were wrong. If there is any possibility of finding them, we must try. The search began with the limited evidence available. The message from Samuel Gray, the recordings from the council chamber, the personal journals and diaries scattered across human space. Scientists from every major civilization threw themselves into the investigation. Determined to solve the greatest mystery the galaxy had ever known, the first breakthrough came from the Morven research team. Their scientists had been analyzing the physical locations where humans had vanished, searching for any residual energy or matter that might explain the disappearance. They found nothing ordinary, but they found something extraordinary. There are anomalies in the quantum structure of space, reported the lead researcher, a being called Crystalline 7. Subtle distortions that are invisible to normal sensors but become apparent when analyzed at the subatomic level. These distortions are concentrated around areas of high human population. The implications were staggering. Whatever had happened to humanity had left traces in the fabric of reality itself. Further analysis revealed more details. The distortions formed patterns that suggested controlled movement rather than random destruction. Whatever had taken humanity had done so deliberately, precisely, and gently. There was no violence in the quantum signatures, no force. Just a smooth transition from one state of existence to another. They were not destroyed. Crystalline 7 announced to a stunned assembly. They were not transported to another location in normal space. Based on these readings, I believe humanity stepped outside of our physical universe entirely. They transcended. The word hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Transcendence was not unknown in galactic history. Several ancient species had reportedly achieved it, ascending beyond physical existence to become beings of pure energy or consciousness. But those ascensions had taken millions of years of gradual evolution. Humanity had done it in an instant. That is impossible, protested a Vulcan scientist. Humans were the youngest species in the galaxy. They had no advanced technology. Their understanding of physics was elementary at best. How could they achieve something that has taken other species millions of years? The answer came from an unexpected source. Lucy Palmer's personal research files had been stored on a remote server in the Andromeda observation post. Lucy had been an anthropologist, studying galactic civilizations. But her private work had focused on something far more ambitious. She had been researching transcendence itself. Her files contained centuries of observations and calculations, all leading to a single conclusion. Humans have been capable of transcendence for over 200 years, her final research summary stated. Our species developed this ability naturally, far faster than any other known civilization. We believe this rapid development is connected to our short lifespans and our emotional intensity. We experience more, feel more, and grow more in our brief years than species that live for millennia. The file continued, "We have chosen not to transcend. Not because we cannot, but because we do not want to leave the physical universe behind. We have stayed because we hope to find connection with other species. We have stayed because we believed the galaxy could become a family." The date on the research summary was over 2 centuries old. Humanity had been sitting on the ability to become godlike beings for 200 years, and they had chosen to remain mortal and vulnerable because they wanted friends. The revelation sent shockwaves through galactic civilization. Species that had considered themselves vastly superior to humanity were forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. The primitive Cretu race they had mocked and dismissed had possessed powers beyond imagination. They could have left at any time. They could have abandoned the physical universe and its petty conflicts centuries ago, but they had stayed. They had stayed and suffered and hoped, all because they believed the galaxy could be better than it was. "We were never their judges," Threntia said, her ancient voice trembling with emotion. "We were their students. They were waiting for us to grow up, to mature, to become worthy of their friendship. And when we failed to do so, they finally gave up." The council fell into a deep silence. For the first time, they understood the true nature of their relationship with humanity. They had not been the wise elders tolerating primitive newcomers. They had been children watched over by beings of incredible patience and compassion. The search for humanity took on new urgency. If humans had transcended, perhaps they could be contacted. Perhaps there was a way to reach across the boundary between physical and non-physical existence. Teams of scientists developed new sensors capable of detecting the quantum distortions associated with human transcendence. They mapped the boundary regions where physical space seemed too thin, where reality became permeable to other forms of existence. They found nothing. No signals. No messages. No indication that humanity was even aware of the search. "Perhaps they are not listening," suggested a despairing researcher. "Or perhaps," replied Nathriel quietly, "they are waiting to see if we are worth listening to." The search continued for years, driven more by hope than expectation. New technologies were developed. New theories were proposed. Every possible method of contacting a transcended species was attempted. Nothing worked. But the search itself began to change galactic civilization. The Catharian-Thurican empires, still technically at war, found themselves collaborating on research projects. The Morven and Sarathi, ancient rivals, shared data and resources freely. Species that had not cooperated in millennia now worked together daily. "Look at us," observed Chancellor Zorath during a research summit. "Look at what we have become. We are doing what humanity always wanted us to do. We are working together. We are treating each other with respect. We are becoming a family." He paused, looking out at the diverse assembly of beings who had gathered to search for their lost friends. Perhaps that was their plan all along. Perhaps they knew that their departure would force us to change. Perhaps they are watching us right now, waiting to see if we complete the transformation they always believed we were capable of. No one could prove that theory. No one could disprove it either. But it gave the searchers something they desperately needed. It gave them hope. The search continued. The years passed, and somewhere beyond the veil of physical existence, 11 billion transcended souls watched and waited, hoping that their long absence would finally teach the galaxy what their long presence never could. 10 years had passed since humanity vanished. From the physical universe, the galaxy that remained bore little resemblance to the one humanity had left behind. The Great War in the Outer Reach had ended, not through military victory, but through exhaustion and a growing recognition that conflict served no one. The Cathari Thurican empires had signed a permanent peace treaty, the first in their 10,000-year rivalry. The Morven Collective had opened their borders to trade and cultural exchange for the first time in recorded history. The economic networks had been rebuilt, this time with an emphasis on fairness and mutual benefit rather than exploitation. New institutions had been created to ensure that no species would ever be treated as humanity had been treated. The Galactic Council had reformed its voting structure, guaranteeing equal representation for all member civilizations, regardless of age or technological development. A new generation of diplomats had been trained in human negotiation techniques. Studying recordings and documents from the human archives, they learned the art of finding common ground, of listening more than speaking, of seeing the universe through the eyes of others. They were not as skilled as the humans had been, but they were trying. Earth had been declared a memorial world, protected from development or exploitation. The cities remained exactly as humanity had left them, preserved by automated systems that continued to function without oversight. Delegations from across the galaxy made pilgrimages to the human homeworld, walking the empty streets and trying to imagine the people who had once filled them. On this day, the 10th anniversary of humanity's departure, representatives from 47 civilizations gathered in a small garden in a city once called Boston. The garden had been a favorite spot for human families, according to recovered records. Children had played on the grass while parents watched from wooden benches. Now those benches held alien beings who had never known a human child, but mourned them anyway. At the center of the garden stood a memorial stone. It had been carved from granite quarried on Earth itself, its surface polished to a mirror shine. A bronze plaque was set into the stone, bearing words written in 100 galactic languages. Chancellor Zorath approached the memorial slowly. He was old now, very old by Velcon standards. His scales had faded from brilliant blue to pale gray, and his movements had lost their former grace, but his voice remained strong as he addressed the assembled mourners. "We come here today to remember," he said. "To remember a species that believed in us when we did not believe in them. To remember friends we never appreciated. To remember teachers we never acknowledged." He gestured at the diverse crowd surrounding him. "Look at us." Cathari and Thurican, standing side by side. Morven and Sirathi sharing the same air. Species that once refused to acknowledge each other's existence, now gathered to honor a common loss. This is humanity's true legacy. Not the technology they helped us build, not the problems they helped us solve, but this unity, cooperation, family. Zorath turned to face the memorial stone. For 300 years, humans lived among us. They asked for nothing but acceptance. They gave everything and expected nothing in return. When we failed to accept them, they did not respond with anger or violence. They simply left, hoping that their absence would teach us what their presence could not. He reached out with one weathered hand and touched the bronze plaque. "The lesson has been learned. The teaching has been received. We have become what you always believed we could become." His voice cracked with emotion. "We miss you. We need you. We love you, though we learned to say it far too late." The plaque bore a message, the same message in every language. "We came to the stars hoping to find friends. We found you instead. We stayed hoping you would become the friends we sought. We leave hoping you will become the friends the universe needs. Look up. We are still watching. We are still hoping. Become more than you are. At the bottom of the plaque, in simple letters, the human race. After Zorath finished speaking, the mourners stood in silence. Some wept openly. Others simply stared at the memorial, lost in thoughts and feelings they could not express. Then something happened that no one could explain. A warmth passed through the garden, though the day was cool. A feeling of presence, though no one knew had arrived. Those who experienced it later struggled to describe the sensation. It was like being wrapped in a gentle embrace by something vast and loving. It was like hearing a voice that spoke directly to the soul. It was like being seen, truly seen, for the first time. The feeling lasted only a moment. Then it was gone, leaving behind a strange peace that settled over the assembled beings like a soft blanket. Nathriel of the Sirathi was the first to speak. Her voice was barely a whisper. They heard us. No one questioned her statement. No one asked for proof. They had all felt it. After 10 years of searching, after countless failed attempts at contact, humanity had finally responded. Not with words, not with signals, with something far more powerful, with love. The anniversary ceremony ended, but the feeling of that moment lingered. Delegates returned to their homeworlds carrying stories of what they had experienced. The news spread across the galaxy, rekindling hope that had begun to fade. Humanity was still out there. They were watching. They were hoping. And for the first time in 10 years, they had reached back, high above Earth. Beyond the reach of any sensor or telescope, 11 billion transcended souls observed the memorial service. They existed now in a realm beyond physical limitation. Their consciousness expanded to encompass realities that material beings could not comprehend. They had gained powers that their former neighbors could not imagine, but they had not forgotten who they were. They had not forgotten the galaxy they had left behind. They had not forgotten the civilizations that had once dismissed them as primitive and insignificant. And when they saw what the galaxy had become, when they witnessed the unity and cooperation they had always dreamed of, they felt something they had not felt in 10 long years. Pride that transcended humans communed without words. Sharing thoughts and feelings at the speed of light, they discussed what they had seen. They debated what they should do. Some argued that it was too soon to return. The galaxy was changing, but the transformation was not complete. Another century might be needed. Another millennium, perhaps others disagreed. The galaxy had proven itself. The lesson had been learned. It was time to come home. The debate continued for what seemed like years to the transcended beings, though only moments passed in physical time. Finally, a consensus emerged. Not yet. But soon, the galaxy was on the right path. The civilizations were learning to cooperate. The old hatreds were fading. The new generation was being raised with values that humanity had always championed. A few more years, a few more steps, then the reunion could begin. For now, they would continue to watch, continue to hope, continue to love from afar, and they would wait for the day when they could finally return to the family they had never stopped believing in. 1,000 years later, that day came. A signal emerged from beyond the physical realm, transmitted simultaneously to every world in the galaxy. It was simple and short, but its meaning was clear. You are ready. We are coming home. Across 1,000 worlds, 1,000 species looked up at the stars and wept with joy. The long separation was ending. The family was being reunited. On Earth, in the garden in Boston, the memorial stone began to glow with a soft, warm light. Beings from across the galaxy gathered to witness what happened next. The light grew brighter. Shapes began to form within it. Human shapes. Samuel Gray stepped out of the light first, followed by Lucy Palmer, Daniel Torres, and billions more. They were changed, transformed by their centuries of transcendence, but they were still recognizably human. Still the species that had once been mocked as primitive and insignificant, Chancellor Zorath. Now, ancient beyond measure, but kept alive by the best medical technology the galaxy could provide, stepped forward to meet them, "Welcome home," he said, his voice trembling with emotion he could not contain. "Welcome home, old friends." Samuel Gray smiled, and in that smile was 300 years of hope finally fulfilled. "It is good to be back," he said. "We have missed you." The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity had returned. And for the first time in its long history, the universe truly became a family. The children had grown up, and the parents had come home to stay.